Thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is over. Israel launching major strikes against Hamas in Gaza after the terrorist group refused to release its remaining hostages. And Israel may be stepping up its attacks on Hamas in the days ahead as well. The Israeli strikes coming just weeks after President Donald Trump warned the terrorist group there would be hell to pay if the captives were not let go. The president also issuing warnings to the Houthi rebels in Iran. Here at home, a legal battle over the president's move to deport immigrants that the administration says are criminals. We're going to look at where that court fight stands now. And God is still at work on college campuses. We're going to show you a recent gospel event at a major university where more than 1,000 students were saved and set free. All those stories and more right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
I want to begin this busy Tuesday in the Middle East, where the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel has come to an end as Israeli warplanes begin pounding Hamas targets inside Gaza early today. The renewed fighting comes after Hamas refused to extend the ceasefire deal. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us the story now. He's reporting from Jerusalem.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave the order overnight, stating the aim is to achieve the war's objectives, including the release of all of our hostages, both the living and the fallen. The cabinet approved the decision after Hamas repeatedly refused to release the hostages and rejected proposals presented by President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and other mediators.
What we have seen them do is prepare for a terror attack against our troops in Gaza, but more importantly, against our civilians in the communities outside of Gaza and the Western Negev. What we did is we took a preemptive strike on those terrorists, specifically those commanders, and on terror targets, removing those threats, and basically saying we will not accept this.
President Trump was informed of the plan beforehand.
The Trump administration and the White House were consulted by the Israelis on their attacks in Gaza tonight. And as President Trump has made it clear, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America, will see a price to pay.
Israel's new chief of staff, Eyal Zamir, oversaw the operations alongside the head of the Shin Bet, Ronen Bar. Earlier in the week, Netanyahu announced he plans to fire Bar, the head of the nation's most powerful intelligence agency, over internal disagreements. That would be unprecedented in Israel's history. The attacks now dramatically change the situation between Israel and Hamas after several weeks of ceasefire and negotiations. The two sides' bottom line demands are contradictory. Israel insists the war can't permanently end till Hamas frees the hostages, disarms, and gives up governing Gaza. Hamas refuses to lay its arms and give up power. It says it won't release the hostages till Israel ends the war and withdraws its troops. Hamas is now issuing threats against the captives, saying in a statement that ending the ceasefire is, quote, exposing the hostages in Gaza to an unknown fate. However, the hostages are Hamas's only real bargaining chip, and if they're all killed, there'll be nothing left to keep the IDF from going all out to destroy the terror group. All this comes as the U.S. continues strikes at Houthi targets in Yemen to end their attacks on shipping in the region.
Today, the operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the president's objectives.
President Trump is now giving Iran, the Houthis' main sponsor, a tough warning. He posted on Truth Social, every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot being fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire.
Continue our coverage now with Chris in Israel. Chris, are these strikes intended to be pressure tactics to get Hamas to release the hostages? And will Israel keep striking Hamas until they either agree to a hostage release deal or Israel basically wipes out Hamas?
Well, first of all, Ephraim, I think part of this is an attempt to stop that imminent attack that the IDF spokesman talked about, that Hamas was preparing. We asked him about a ground operation and will this actually increase. He told us that all options are on the table and they're committed to the goals of the war, which would be freeing all the hostages and then dismantling Hamas, make sure they can never carry out another October 7th. And for Israel, unless they change their goals, this is a fight to the finish. They want to eliminate Hamas, which they believe this is an existential war. And they said also, it's been reported that these airstrikes didn't pose a threat to the hostages' safety, but they did target Hamas's ability to govern. But to your question, it does put pressure on Hamas to release more of the hostages, and that certainly was part of the reasoning for the attack last night against Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
Could Israel step up its attacks and go beyond Gaza?
Well, actually, in one sense, Ephraim, they're already going beyond Gaza. One thing that we've noted before is that they're actually hitting targets in Syria. They consider the Islamist regime there a threat, and they don't want the Assad regime's weapons, anything from military infrastructure to chemical weapons, being used in the future against Israel. The next huge question really is going to be Iran. The U.S. position is becoming increasingly clear with the attack on the Houthis, and the signal is don't support the enemies of the U.S. And so the combination of what the Trump administration is doing in Yemen and what Israel is doing in Gaza really sends a strong message that Israel and the U.S. are both prepared to go beyond Gaza, whether it includes Syria. And the big question is it going to include Iran itself?
How are the Israeli Defense Forces preparing the home front now?
Well, they're just warning citizens around the Gaza Strip right now. They're saying there has to be limited activity. That means they're closing down schools. They're also sending a warning to residents in Gaza on the other side of the border, and they sent them a map. And I'll show you part of this map, Ephraim. This is a map sent to residents in Gaza telling them to get out of harm's way. This is when they began the operation, they're telling the people these are dangerous combat zones. For their own safety, move away from these areas and seek shelter and safety. When we talked earlier to Nadav Shoshani, the IDF spokesman, he said, what other army actually tells its enemies to get out of harm's way? So this is part of what's the warnings that are going on in the Home Front Command, not only on the Israeli side of the Gaza border, but inside Gaza itself.
Let's turn around now back to the hostages. What are some hostage advocates planning?
Well, one of them is planning a demonstration here in Jerusalem. They're demanding the government that would stop the war. They accuse the government of, quote, giving up on the hostages. On the other hand, there's another group, Ephraim, called the Tikva Forum, and they're represented families of the Israeli hostages as well. They publicly support the Israeli government's decision to resume the military operations against Hamas in Gaza. Now, their argument, Ephraim, is that intensified military pressure is essential to compel Hamas to release all the hostages, and they emphasize that it's only through military pressure, a complete blockade on Gaza, including electricity and water, and occupation of the territories that will lead to Hamas's collapse. And they believe this is exactly the strategy that needs to be used to free all of the hostages. And we know now there's 59 hostages that are remaining. 24 are still believed to be alive.
What about Iran? Are these strikes and the U.S. strikes on the Houthis a warning to Iran about potential attacks on its nuclear program?
I think that's exactly what it is, Ephraim. You know, Trump offered to negotiate with Iran over its nuclear program, but Iran rejected that offer. And there's been joint U.S.-Israeli exercises. So a strike seems to be possible and perhaps even likely. Trump indicated something will be coming in regards to Iran. And you saw in the end of our report about his warnings, direct warnings to Iran. On the other hand, Iran seems to be racing towards nuclear weapons. So we may be coming to the showdown that's been anticipated literally for decades very soon. There was that exercise, included a B-52 bomber, F-15 and F-35I fighters. And so it looks like perhaps there's a joint U.S.-Israeli operation in the near future. We can't guarantee that for sure, but it seems to be so many things are lining up more than ever to really hit Iran's nuclear facilities.
All right, this week is already off to a busy start. What do you have for us this evening on Jerusalem Dateline?
Well, we have more updates on what's happening. We have more from the IDF spokesman, Nadav Shoshani, explaining the situation. We have a story about a new pro-Israeli organization. Mario Bromnik is going to talk to us about that. Cindy Jacobs, we have an interview with her, and she's telling us that really the Holy Spirit wants to do a great reset in Israel and Gaza and a major move of God here in the Middle East. Something that we cannot imagine. And we also have what's a Purim montage. They just celebrated the Feast of Purim, celebrating the deliverance of the Jewish people 2,500 years ago, and many people seeing that as a foretaste of Israel defeating its enemies today.
All right, our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, thank you as always for your insight. Of course, we look forward to seeing you in the days ahead this week. You can see Jerusalem Dateline this evening at 8 Eastern. You can find it on the CBN News channel. You can also watch it on the CBN News app, or you can watch on YouTube. Coming up here at home, President Donald Trump involved in a legal battle over deporting some alleged immigrant gang members. We're going to bring you a look at what this fight is all about. We've got the story for you when we come back. You are watching CBN NewsWatch.
Introducing a brand new way to start your morning. Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Discover how God is moving around the world and here at home. Plus, get exclusive stories and daily scripture encouragement just for you. Stay informed. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
President Donald Trump in a legal battle over his deportation of alleged immigrant gang members over the weekend. Critics say the administration chose to ignore a federal judge's directive to turn the planes around. Trump invoking the Alien Enemies Act from 1798 to deport the immigrants, whom he calls criminals. CBN's Wendy Griffith is on this story.
Major questions over the legality of President Trump invoking the Alien Enemies Act and the decision not to obey a judge's order to return deportees to the U.S. A showdown between President Trump and the federal court over his deportation of hundreds of alleged immigrant gang members.
We removed terrorists. That should be a celebration. We removed terrorists from this country, and I stand by what the president did. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
The Trump administration flew 2 planes carrying more than 200 Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador to be imprisoned. This video from the country's president shows alleged members of the trendy Aragua gang arriving over the weekend. When the ACLU filed suit against the administration, the judge ordered that the planes must be returned to the United States, but the administration says they were already out of U.S. territory.
We are not saying at this point that the government defied the court order, but we are saying there are serious reasons to potentially think that they did.
When asked whether his administration complied with the order, President Trump said,
"I don't know. You have to speak to the lawyers about it."
One Trump official contends the courts don't have the authority to block presidential policy when it comes to national defense.
At a fundamental level, a district court judge has no authority to direct the national security operations of the executive branch.
Hans von Spakovsky of the Heritage Foundation tells CBN News the Alien Enemies Act empowers the president to order the removal of people deemed a threat.
So he doesn't have to go to a court to get an arrest or detention warrant. The president himself can issue a warrant for the removal of these aliens. So it's actually the judge acting outside of the Constitution and the law by trying to override the president's judgment.
The White House press secretary claimed there are questions whether the judge's verbal order carries the same weight as a written one. The judge called that one heck of a stretch, and he's demanding the administration give an explanation why his order was not obeyed by noon on Tuesday. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Still ahead, feeling tired and sick. We're going to hear why the cause could be a disease you never suspected. We'll have that interview for you. It's coming up right after this. Far too many people feel sick and tired, but they don't know why. On this week's edition of Healthy Living, we're going to hear from a woman who says the problem might be an autoimmune disease. Take a look.
You suffered with an autoimmune disease for 35 long years before it was diagnosed. And honestly, this is not that unusual because, as I said, autoimmune diseases are a little bit tricky, a little bit elusive to everyone. And so now you've dedicated the rest of your life to helping people identify autoimmune disease, and that includes doctors. So before we get too deep into your story, which is fascinating and inspirational, talk about what an autoimmune disease is. A lot of people don't even know what an autoimmune disease is unless they have it or know someone with one.
That's actually true. Autoimmune disease is when the body, which is supposed to protect us through toxins and from bacteria, viruses, and things of that nature, our bodies are designed by God to protect us from that. But what happens with autoimmune is that the body turns on itself and begins to attack healthy tissues and organs, causing devastating damage. And that's exactly what happened to me. And that's what's happening to many others, especially if it takes a long time for you to get a diagnosis.
So can you name some autoimmune diseases?
Yes, I can. There's rheumatoid arthritis. A lot of people are very familiar with that one. We also have lupus. We also have type 1 diabetes. And we also have many, many others, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And I mean, the list goes on and on. There are over 100 autoimmune diseases that are out there today. And many people who are suffering from it are not even aware of them. And that's why I want to speak out, to get people to know. I have to bring awareness to the people to let them know these diseases are very, very serious, and we need to pay attention to them.
It's so true. A lot of people don't realize, they feel awful. They don't realize that they have an autoimmune disease, and they don't realize that they're not supposed to feel that way. People, for example, with thyroid issues, they're tired all the time, and they think, well, this is just life. I'm just, everybody's always tired, and no, that's not true.
That's right.
Can you talk about your situation? You have an incredible story. You suffered for 35 long years before you were diagnosed. Tell us a little bit about what you went through.
Ari, it was horrendous. I am sitting here with you today, but by the grace of God, and as they say in Hebrew, Baruch Hashem, it is because of him that I am alive. I suffered for many, many years, and it was long before 35 years, but it took the medical establishment 35 years to give me a viable diagnosis, and my life was horrible. I suffered, I was sick, fatigue, rashes, missed menstrual periods, couldn't eat, digestive issues. I suffered the gamut, crying all the time, didn't know what was wrong with me, going to see my doctor day in and day out. I had a plethora of doctors. I had over 15 doctors seeing me, and not one of them were able to tell me that it was an autoimmune disease until 15 years ago. I'm sorry, I apologize, 9.5 years ago. That's how long it's been. And I just was so devastated. I told my family and I told others that I've spoken with that once I find out, I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping others. I was so devastated trying to go to work. I had to leave my job. I had a wonderful teaching career and I had to leave my job. That broke me because I could not bear what I was going through and continue to go to work every day and teach my wonderful students.
You can hear more about how to recognize the symptoms of an autoimmune disease and get the help you need on this week's edition of the Healthy Living Show. You can find it on the CBN News channel at 2:30 and at 8:30 Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Coming up, more college students coming to Christ at a major university. We're going to bring you the story coming up next.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Once more, thousands of college students came together for the gospel, this time at West Virginia University. It happened last week. More than 5,000 came to praise Jesus Christ at the Unite Us event. The group's founder, Tanya Pruitt, telling CBN News more than 1,000 students were saved and set free. The organizers say they were, quote, blown away by the response from the students. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable, and today I want to leave you with this message to post, tag, tweet, and share with those in your circles of influence. Remember this, it is never too late to do what God is calling you to do. As long as you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Make today the day you start. Time is going to pass regardless. Don't let another moment pass you by. With that word, make this a terrific Tuesday. That will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel at any time. You can also find them online. That address is cbnnews.com. Take a moment and let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We look forward to seeing you right back here, same time tomorrow. Have a great day.